Was Jesus born on December 25th?
No. No,
Well,
he was
there
not.
we go, folks.
Okay, that's it.
You can all go
Let's
home now.
First of all, first clue, Luke 2, it says, "And she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in cloths, laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. In the same region, there were some shepherds staying out in the fields, keeping watch over their flocks by night." That alone is a clue right there. Because people who argue December 25th seek to deal with this. The rabbis say in the Talmud that shepherds would only be out in the fields around March until the next rainy season. So people argue, well, you know, the winter there is not, the winter still gets cold there too. I mean, if you've been to Israel in the winter, it does get, I've been there when there's been snow. They're not just keeping their sheep in the pens, they're out in the fields and at night, which is very strange. Why would they be out in the fields at night? Well, you know, some people have argued, this is another one, that he was born in the autumn, he was born during the Feast of Tabernacles, which I understand because they say, well, God tabernacling with us. The problem is that during Tabernacles, the males had to all be in Jerusalem. So the birth of Messiah would not cause Joseph to break the law by being outside of Jerusalem when he's born. It's not going to do that. The birth of Messiah is going to fulfill everything. So there is one time of the year that shepherds would especially be out with their flocks at night. Only one. That's in the springtime. Why are they watching their flocks at all hours? Because shepherds during one particular time do that. It's when the sheep give birth to lambs. In the lambing season. That's the only time. That's where they're watching. At any time of day, any time of night, they're watching for any birth. That's the only time. And when would that happen? The lambs are not like people. They're only born at one time.
I never knew that.
Lambs are only born at a certain time of the year, not like us. They can only be born in a certain season. Lambs are born in the springtime. That's the first thing. They're born in the springtime. They could start as early as February, but it really would go March, April. That's the center. That's the Hebrew month of Nisan. We're going to also go through Nisan is that month. So during that, they'd be watching it, which all fits together because, you know, the shepherds, their job is to watch because a lamb, they have to make sure that lamb's okay. So it's what a perfect thing to begin with because Jesus is the Lamb of God. So why would God have, who would he have to greet the birth? Shepherds who are watching for the birth of the lambs. So here that's so perfect of God. Messiah is the Lamb of God and they're there greeting. That's what they're doing. And so, and where is he born? He's born in Bethlehem or Beit Lechem. And the thing is that Bethlehem, people don't know this, because of some clues we have in the writings of the rabbis, was actually a place where the lambs that they had were actually the lambs for the temple sacrifice. Bethlehem especially was the lambs for the temple sacrifice.
Really?
So here, what more perfect place and time, Messiah born at the time of the lambs, when the sacrificial lambs are born, in the place where they're born. Now here's something else that is going to point to this period. There's a clue in Exodus. Exodus 12 says, take a lamb, a male, 1 year old. It's the Passover lamb. And so now you can read that and miss something. The lamb that is the Passover lamb, and Jesus, Yeshua, is the Passover lamb, is a year old at the time of Passover. So it means it had to be born a year before in the springtime to be a year old. So here Messiah, so the Passover lamb dies on Passover. Messiah is the Passover lamb. He dies on Passover, but it's also born at the time of Passover. That's Nisan, spring. So Messiah, if the Passover lamb is born at the same time when it dies. So that's the next clue. The next clue is the holy days of Israel. And here, what does that have to do with this mystery? Well, the central events of Messiah's life and his time on earth, they all take place on Hebrew holy days. One, people don't even realize, Palm Sunday, first Hebrew holiday ever given to Israel was Palm Sunday. And where it is, it doesn't say Palm Sunday, it's in Exodus 12 when it says, take a lamb on the 10th day of the month, you'll take the lamb, you'll keep it for 4 days, you'll take the lamb to your house. That's called the 10th of Nisan. The first command given to Israel to continually keep. The 10th of Nisan is the day of the lamb, the day that they take the lamb to their house, keep it there until the time of the sacrifice. So what happens? The 10th of Nisan, count back from the Last Supper as Passover, the 14th, 15th of Nisan, go back, you are at Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is the 10th of Nisan. It's the first Hebrew day ever given. When he's coming to Jerusalem, they're all taking the lambs to their house. God is taking the Lamb of God to his house on the day of the lamb being taken to the house.
Oh my.
It's all there.
really
And the first thing in this, the first command ever given to Israel to go was, think about this, was take the lamb. In Hebrew, you can translate it, accept the lamb, receive the lamb. The first command he gives to the Jewish people is accept the lamb. And he is coming as the Lamb of God. God is moving him, getting ready for the sacrifice on the same day. I mean, God is so perfect. That's just one. I didn't even mean to share on that. And then when does he die? He dies on the other Hebrew holy day, which is Passover, the lamb. When does he rise? He rises on the other Hebrew holy day. We can do a whole thing on this. The Feast of First Fruit, the day of the first fruit, when the first fruit is lifted up from the earth as the new life of God, he is raised up as the first fruit. Paul even says it's on the day of the first fruit. Everything happens. You think, what's the next great event of the church? It's Pentecost. Pentecost is a Jewish holiday. People don't realize that. Yes. Pentecost is Shavuot in Hebrew. You know that the word Pentecost is a Jewish word that those same Greek rabbis who came up with the tower, calling it the come let us build a tower. They're the same ones who came up with the name Pentecost. And Pentecost is a Jewish holiday. In fact, there are some Orthodox Jews will know that they're celebrating Pentecost. They were the first Pentecostals because they're celebrating that. Moses was the Pentecostal. He told them to celebrate this. And in Greek, it's Pentecost 50 days. In Hebrew, it's Feast of Weeks. Same thing. So everything happens on a Hebrew holiday of his life. His death, his resurrection. So, of course, his birth. God is very accurate and absolute. It's going to happen on a significant holy day of Israel. So the question is, which one? It begins in the springtime. The first feast is Passover. The age begins with Passover, Messiah on the cross. And it ends with tabernacles, when God will come down and tabernacle. So when would he be born prophetically? It's not going to be in the autumn. That's the second coming. Got to be in the spring again. It all points back to the spring. And it points back to this month called Nisan, which means the beginning. The month means the beginning. That's what it means. That's when it all begins. So, and everything he does in order. You count back. You got resurrection in the Nisan. You got Passover, 15th of Nisan. You got Palm Sunday, 10th of Nisan. You only have a few more days from the beginning that this has got to happen. So it's narrowing it down now to the very first days of Nisan. And so now the next clue. Every time he fulfills a holy day, he doesn't just fulfill the time. The theme of that day, he fulfills it. For instance, Passover, he dies as the Passover lamb. First fruits, he rises. So everything has to do with that. Is there any day on the Hebrew calendar that would match up with birth, new beginning, new everything? There is one day, and it happens to be in Nisan. And the one day is Nisan 1, which is the very beginning of the Hebrew year, the very day that begins everything. And this is the day that it's the real New Year, though most Jewish people think Rosh Hashanah is
Rosh
New Year.
Hashanah.
It's not. The real New Year of God is Nisan 1. Now, the thing about Nisan 1 is, you don't have to be in Jerusalem. There's no command to be in Jerusalem, yet it's a holy day, so Joseph could be there at that time. Think about this. It's the day that begins the calendar. It changes the calendar. The old calendar is gone. The new calendar begins. What does Messiah's birth do when he comes to this world? He changes the calendar. Yes. The whole calendar is changed, BC AD, and there's one day in the Hebrew calendar that matches that, and that's Nisan 1. It's the calendar changer. But now we're going to even go deeper.